Life has this strange, beautiful way of keeping us waiting, waiting for answers, waiting for healing, waiting for answers, waiting for healing, waiting for someone who sees us, really sees us. And for the longest time, I thought maybe love just wasn't meant to circle back to me. But then she found me, not in the noise, not in the chaos, but in the quiet moments where I had almost stopped looking. She found me in the version of myself I was still learning to understand. And that's the thing about love. It doesn't always arrive when we feel ready. It arrives when we're honest, when we're open, when we're willing to grow. Today, I want to tell you what it means to be found. Not as someone perfect, not as someone perfect, not as someone complete, but as someone worthy. Because if she can find me, then trust me, someone can find you too. You know, there's something strangely beautiful about the way life waits until you're convinced nothing meaningful is going to happen. And then it places someone in front of you who changes everything you thought you understood about yourself. For the longest time, I walked through my days with a quiet sense of distance inside me, not pain exactly, but a kind of emotional gravity that kept me from reaching out too far or expecting too much. I kept people at an arm's length, not because I didn't want connection, but because I wasn't sure I deserved it, or that I even knew what to do with it. If it finally arrived, there's this unspoken belief we develop sometimes that being alone is safer than hoping for something real and watching it slip through our fingers again. And I lived in that space for quite a while, convincing myself that solitude was my natural state, that it was easier to remain unfound than to risk being misunderstood or unwanted. But existence has a peculiar rhythm. When you least expect it, it shifts. It doesn't announce the shift dramatically, it just nudges you like a soft breeze brushing against your awareness. And one day, in the midst of my quiet, in the midst of the version of me who had almost stopped believing, she appeared. It wasn't a grand entrance or a cinematic moment. It was something gentler, something softer, something that felt as if the universe whispered, "You're not invisible. Something sees you." And when she found me, it wasn't the polished or strong version of myself that stepped into her light. It was the parts of me that were still learning how to breathe after years of holding everything in. It was the uncertain parts, the pieces of me that were still healing from wounds I never told anyone about. She didn't find me standing tall and fearless. She found me in those quiet spaces of uncertainty. And yet somehow she looked at me as if she had discovered something worth cherishing. That alone began to shift something inside me.
Because there's a particular kind of magic that happens when someone looks at you and really sees you, not the version you present, not the version you present, not the mask you wear to make the world more comfortable, but the truth beneath it all.
When she looked at me, it was like she could see the entire map of my journey, the broken roads, the silent nights, the places where I had gotten lost, the parts of me I had abandoned. She didn't turn away from any of it. She didn't turn away from any of it. You she didn't recoil. She didn't question why I wasn't further along in my own evolution. She just accepted it, accepted me, accepted the weight and the softness of everything I carried. I had spent so long believing that love needed to be earned through perfection. I thought I had to become someone stronger, someone more impressive, someone flawless before I could allow love to enter my life again. But she showed me something different. She showed me that love isn't given because you are perfect. It's given because someone recognizes your sincerity, your effort to grow even when you feel like you're moving slowly. She didn't want a perfect man standing in front of her. She wanted the real one, the one who had failed, learned, struggled, risen, and kept going, even when he wasn't sure why. Being seen that way, being found in a state of imperfection, it changes something deep in your spirit. It softens the edges of your fears. It makes vulnerability feel less like a risk and more like an invitation. When she found me, I began to understand that being real, being honest, being emotionally open is not a weakness. It's the only path where genuine connection can exist. There were days before she arrived when I felt like I was just drifting through conversations, drifting through days, drifting through moments that didn't feel like they truly belonged to me. I would wake up and do the things I was supposed to do, smile when I needed to, laugh when the world expected me to, but somewhere inside, a part of me remained untouched, unstirred. I was living, but I wasn't feeling it. And when you spend long enough in that state, you start believing that maybe that's all your heart is capable of. Maybe passion and connection are luxuries meant for other people, people less complicated, people with fewer shadows trailing behind them. But the remarkable thing about love, true love, is that it doesn't demand that you erase your shadows. It doesn't ask you to pretend they don't exist. It walks with you inside them. She didn't try to drag me into the light. She stood beside me in the dim places until I realized I wasn't alone. She didn't rush me toward healing or insist I be ready before I was. She just gave me space, presence, patience, and that patience became a form of love so pure that it began to melt barriers I didn't even know I had built. Her presence didn't overwhelm me. It steadied me. It reminded me that I didn't need to be constantly strong to be worthy of affection. I didn't need to have all the answers. I didn't need to present a curated version of myself. She found beauty even in the places where I had only seen scars. And that kind of acceptance has a way of reshaping the way you view your own reflection. Slowly, I began to see myself through the gentler things she held up for me. I began to believe that I wasn't too complicated, too damaged, too difficult to love. She found me in a phase of my life where I believed the door had mostly closed on the kind of connection that lights up the soul. I thought my chance had passed, that maybe I had used up my luck in the past, and that what remained was quiet acceptance of loneliness. But she reminded me that love doesn't operate on deadlines. But she reminded me that love doesn't operate on deadlines. It doesn't follow schedules or show up at the moments when you're fully prepared to receive it. It arrives when you're fully prepared to receive it. It arrives when your heart is honest, even if it's trembling, even if it's unsure, even if it's scared. And when she found me, she didn't just enter my life, she entered my silence. She stepped into the spaces where I had tucked away dreams I believed were too fragile to speak aloud. She encouraged them gently, not by pushing me to chase them, but by reminding me that I didn't have to face them alone anymore. There's a deep comfort in having someone beside you who doesn't seek to change you, but instead helps you grow toward who you have always wanted to be. She didn't demand transformation. She didn't demand transformation. She inspired it simply by existing in my world. You know, love often gets portrayed as this grand, overwhelming force that rushes into your life like a storm, rearranging everything instantly. But sometimes it's the exact opposite. Sometimes love arrives quietly, the way dawn touches the horizon, not with thunder, but with warmth. That's how she found me, not with intensity, but with warmth. That's how she found me, not with intensity, but with gentleness, not with pressure, but with presence. She didn't judge me for how long it took for me to open up. She didn't ask why I had walls. She simply stayed long enough for those walls to no longer make sense. She became a safe place, a breath of calm after years of holding everything inside. Music. And I realized something. Being found is not you. It's about someone locating you. It's about allowing someone to walk into the parts of your heart you've kept locked away. It's about trusting that they'll handle your truths with care. And she did. Every part of me, even the parts I wasn't proud of. She treated with gentleness. She didn't run from my insecurities. She didn't run from my insecurities. She didn't treat my vulnerability like a burden. Instead, she embraced it as if understanding me more deeply only made her want to stay closer. There's a feeling that comes when someone chooses you not for the mask you wear, but for the soul beneath it. It's a grounding feeling, a steadying presence that reassures you even on the days you don't feel steady yourself. When she found me, that steadiness began wrapping itself around my life. I didn't feel alone in my own thoughts anymore. I didn't feel like I had to translate myself to be understood. She understood me in ways I hadn't understood myself. And maybe that's what being found truly means. It means being recognized fully, deeply, without hesitation. It means someone looking at you and saying, I see you, I accept you, I choose you. Those words don't always have to be spoken out loud. Sometimes they are spoken in actions, small, consistent, tender actions. Small, consistent, tender actions that tell you you're seen, you're valued, you're loved. When she found me, I realized that the heart is a memory for connection even when the mind tries to forget. I realized that the heart has a memory for connection even when the mind tries to forget. I realized that no matter how long you've been alone, a part of you still hopes, quietly, secretly, for someone who will understand your silence as easily as your laughter. Music. Someone who will treat your heart with respect, with patience, with compassion. She became that someone for me. Not suddenly, not instantly, but steadily. The way a soft melody becomes familiar the more you listen. The way a sunrise becomes comforting when you begin to trust that it will return every morning. She didn't rush into my life to fix anything. She simply joined me in the journey, and by doing so, everything began to feel different. Her presence reminded me that connection doesn't always require fireworks or dramatic declarations. Music, sometimes all it takes is someone choosing to stay, someone choosing to listen, someone choosing to listen, someone choosing to walk beside you even when the path is unclear. Not in a way that replaced my identity or filled every empty space, but in a way that made me feel seen, valued, understood. An emotional recognition that whispered, You're not lost anymore. Music. Sometimes healing doesn't look the way people imagine it. It's not always a triumphant rise, not always a breakthrough moment where everything suddenly feels lighter. Sometimes healing is quiet. Sometimes it's slow. Sometimes it's just you sitting in your own silence, trying to understand why certain wounds stayed with you longer than the moments that caused them. And for a long time, that was my life. I lived in these in between spaces where I wasn't broken anymore, but I wasn't whole either. I didn't know how long it would take to feel like myself again. I didn't know if I ever would. I only knew I was trying, quietly, gently, in my own hesitant way. Healing. Healing is strange like that. It asks you to look at the parts of yourself you've avoided. It asks you to sit with memories that feel heavy. It asks you to forgive even when forgiveness feels undeserved. I didn't realize how much of myself I had tucked away in corners, convinced that hiding would keep me safe. I didn't realize how many feelings I had buried so deeply that I forgot they belonged to me. I didn't realize how numb I had become to things that used to move me. And even in those moments, I kept moving, kept breathing, kept hoping that one day I would feel something warm again. I wasn't ready for anyone to find me in that state. I wasn't prepared for connection. I wasn't prepared for love. When you spend enough time healing alone, you start to believe that maybe this is how it will always be. Your heart learning to survive without expecting anything from anyone. And a part of me accepted that. A part of me even found comfort in the solitude because solitude didn't ask anything of me except honesty. I could be unfinished, I could be uncertain, I could be quietly rebuilding the parts I had lost. And then she found me. Not when I was confident, not when I was ready to be seen. She found me while I was still learning how to open my hands after keeping them closed for so long. She found me during the kind of healing that makes you wonder if you're even healing at all. Music. She walked into a chapter of my life where everything felt fragile, where everything felt fragile, where every step felt like it required more courage than the world knew. And instead of turning away from the parts of me that were still tender, she approached them gently. There was something different about the way she saw me, something that felt like quiet understanding, like she wasn't here to rush my growth or demand explanations for wounds she never caused. She didn't look at me with pity or pressure. She looked at me with pity or pressure. She looked at me with recognition, as if she understood the language of people who've had to rebuild themselves, as if she knew what it was like to learn how to trust your own heart again. And maybe that's why her presence didn't scare me. It softened me. There's a certain kind of peace that comes from being found by someone while you're still healing, because they don't meet the past version of you or the future version you hope to become.